We are live, so I can just remind that cameras on only for committee members of the Policy and Scrutiny Committee, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I've just joined and I'm just trying to sort my computer out. I'll be there in a second. Sorry.
No problem.
Nice sheet, though, Stephen.
They're bright.
A background effects. I had a corporate one. I can't find it or any of the other ones.
No, I've lost corporate as well. I don't know what's going on. I lost the whole screen just now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are live, members. Thank you very much. Welcome to Policy and Scrutiny for Neighbourhoods and Regen. My name is Councillor Michael Beston and I'll be chairing the meeting this afternoon. Welcome to Vanessa. So can I remind all members to keep their cameras on, mute their microphones unless they wish to speak, your mobile phones either off or on to silent, please. And do remember, when your microphone is on, we can hear background noise and comments that you might not wish to be heard. If you could use the chat bar facility, I'll be grateful, or simply raise a hand if you do have a question, that's fine. What I'll do, I'll just go round the committee, we do a sound check and just say hello or good afternoon. So Councillor Shirley Smart, in no particular order, Councillor Shirley Smart.
Hello, hi. Lovely
Shirley.
to see everybody.
Yeah. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans.
Good afternoon, Chair. Member for Newport Central.
Thank you. Councillor Vanessa Churchman.
Good afternoon, Councillor for Haylands, Ashley Haylands and Haven Street, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you. And Councillor Chris Quirk.
Good afternoon, Councillor Chris Quirk, member for Shanklin South.
Thank you very much. We are awaiting for Councillor Outlaw to join and possibly Councillor John Medland, but we're not too sure at the moment. So we will crack on with our agenda. So item 1 on the agenda, minutes from the last meeting. That's pages 5 to 10 on your packs, members, to confirm a true record of the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of October.
So moved.
Are there any?
Seconded.
Okay, that's fine. Before we do that, are any questions or on those particular minutes? No, I'll take that as a no. So proposed by Councillor Chris Quirk, second by Councillor Julie Jones-Evans. Thank you. I'll just quickly sign those minutes off. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 2, declarations of interest. To invite members to declare any interest they may have in the matters on the agenda this afternoon. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest, particularly in item number 4, the COVID recovery plan, as I'm a director of the Chamber of Commerce of the Isle of Wight.
Thank you very much. Duly noted. Are there any other declarations of interest? No, by the looks of it. Okay, agenda item 3, public question time. None received. I believe we did receive one after time that will be referred to the Corporate Scrutiny Committee next week. So, okay, that's great. And okay, agenda item 4. So the Isle of Wight COVID-19 recovery plan, medium term to March 2022. I know that probably Mr. Chris Ashman will come in on this. I mean, from me, just to set the scene, if we can. I mean, we're all aware of where the Isle of Wight is now compared to 2 weeks ago. I mean, there's been a rapid change through the new strain, the mutant virus, that's put the Isle of Wight, the UK, and of course Europe and the rest of the world in a very, very different position. The island went from tier 1 to tier 4 within 1 month, which is a very sobering thought. So, I mean, with that, it would be good to hear the progress made on vaccines. I know that we had the Pfizer vaccine administered across the island before Christmas, and now we have news of a combined Pfizer and Oxford AZ vaccine to be rolled out across the Isle of Wight. So, I mean, certainly the question on a lot of people's lips, if you like, is when we're likely to get the Oxford vaccines, where will they be rolled out, and are there any particular areas or centres that these will be administered from? So also, I mean, I'm sure Chris will, Mr. Ashton will pick up on this as well. We'll be going into the 3rd tranche of grant funding from central government, and how and when that will be rolled out across the island businesses and tourism sector. So I've set the scene slightly, so I'm sure Mr. Ashton would like to come in on that, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chair. By all means, in terms of your helpful summary, it's a challenging environment we all find ourselves in again, and clearly the vaccination agenda that you just described is a very fast moving issue, and partners on the island, and particularly obviously our health colleagues, have worked hard to put in place the necessary early opportunities for distribution of the vaccine, and those have been have begun over the recent weeks, and obviously as the second vaccine becomes available, the programme will be accelerated, and others, particularly in the priority groups that have been highlighted by the government, will be invited to participate. The council's been working really hard with our colleagues in health to provide as much capacity in the system in terms of space and property to enable those centres to be provided. And there's no doubt that the vaccine provides the most tangible and real prospect for enabling a successful recovery from the impacts of the pandemic. That being said, what members have got as an update to the meeting this evening is the current COVID recovery action plan. And as I said at previous meetings of this group, the normal approach to an emergency is you have the issue, you deal with the immediate impacts, and then you coordinate the effective recovery from that. So I've used in the past the example of an emergency flooding incident, for example. Clearly, the pandemic is an ongoing incident and continues to be a challenge for us all. And we've had to reactivate all of our previous response arrangements, which the island fantastically responded to in the first outbreak. We've now had to reactivate all of that machinery, if you want to call it that. And whilst we may be better placed this time, knowing what we're facing, it doesn't lessen the challenge that all services face in actually responding and providing the support to the community and to businesses. So trying to bring forward some semblance of recovery from that agenda, as you rightly highlighted in your opening remarks, is quite a challenging task. That being said, if members take a look at the appendix for the standing action plan, we have, whilst the brief windows of opportunity presented themselves outside the lockdown in November, we've been able to actually bring forward some of the actions set out in the action plan itself. And I think notable of that, from my perspective, is the council being agreed by the Department of Work and Pensions as a host employer for the Kickstart programme. Yeah, we will be advertising for those opportunities for young people in the coming months. So that was a significant step forward. You know, the Department for Work and Pensions are quite rigorous about the employers that they're, particularly those employing over 30 opportunities. They're rigorous about the processes and the partners that they identify, and I think the council being approved for that is quite a significant step forward for us. We mentioned at previous meetings the interventions around the high street, and I think, you know, it was a helpful development of the gift card programme to try and encourage local spend, and also then in partnership with Newport and Carisbrooke Council, the pop-up shop type initiative, and members will be cited on the intervention and support that the administration provided for parking relief and incentives in the run up to the Christmas period. So these are all actions and interventions linked to the recovery planning that have progressed during the recent months and since the last meeting. So I think there's a lot more I can say and update in relation to the different aspects of the plan, and obviously take any comments now in relation to the reactivation of our response programmes to deal with the current lockdown. So I'll pause there, Chair, and take any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashman. So I have Stuart Hutchinson, sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Stuart Hutchinson, and then Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I'm aware of the sort of things that are going on, because being in charge of the COVID recovery plan, it's clearly all my fault. I'm happy to take that broad shoulders. It's perhaps just worth looking at the overview, and when we set up the plan, which Chris has commented on and explained some of the detail, we were looking at several phases. One of them, the first phase, obviously early on in the pandemic, was to put in responses, which we did, and we have now reactivated those responses to this new second wave. We had also, as a next step, containment, and we're working with all of our partners on containment of the pandemic and advice to businesses and trying to keep people safe. And there will be some more information coming out on that shortly. Then we were hoping by this time to have moved towards the emergence phase, which is the precursor to recovery. We all know that with this second wave, which appears to be significantly worse, both in its infectiousness and the number of people that have been infected, as well as the pressure on our own local hospital and other hospitals. Portsmouth and Southampton are in exactly the same position. We have got very little capacity left. So we are not going to get into the recovery phase any time soon. I think we're probably in lockdown for at least another month, maybe longer. Obviously, our teams, led by Chris, have been putting out further application forms for people to claim for the new funding that's been made available through government. So that's underway. We also make sure that we're trying to share the information that we have about the virus and the way we're dealing with it. And we have what's called a local outbreak engagement board. And as you know, that meets in public once a month, but we also meet informally every week on a Monday. That board is chaired by the leader, David Stewart. It has myself as deputy leader. It has Councillor Claire Mosdell, who is responsible for social care, and it has Councillor Gary Peace because of the community safety aspect. And that board is serviced by Simon Bryant, our Director of Public Health, who I have to say, I'll say this publicly now, he and his team are doing an absolutely first-class job in providing us with information, coordinating the various stakeholders to try and contain this problem. And that board also has on it the chief executive and the assistant chief executive. So we meet regularly, and the information that we get will be fed into the public meeting. And of course, we also report formally, as you know, to the Health and Wellbeing Board. So when we have updates, we will put that forward. There's a huge amount going on in the background, and I'm conscious this is just one of a dozen items on the agenda, so I won't take up too much time. But every time we look at something, we seem to see a problem. We're working very hard at the moment on sorting out the ferries who are struggling because they've got far fewer passengers. I know that the reduced number of ferries are carrying more people, and they're trying to make sure that they're carrying the right people. We don't have powers to actually police that. And we are working with government to try and get more support. So, as I say, an awful lot going on. We had in the recovery plan, we'd looked at it for the short term, 3 months. Chris has identified some of the things we've done in that 3 months. We then had the medium term, 3 to 12 months and 12 months longer. I think really the practical issue is that everything will now be pushed back by several weeks whilst we do our damnedest to contain this second phase. So that's really all I need to say, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. That's very informative. So I'm going to go over to Councillor Jones-Evans, and then we'll go to Councillor Quirk, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ashman and Councillor Hutchinson, for the updates. So I note the report we've got in front of us seems to be what we presented to Cabinet back in September. So obviously things have moved on somewhat. Some things have been delivered and started, and some things, I guess, are going to be, as you say, parked completely. So we need to look at this in the light of where we are right now. And I think where we are right this second, and is in most people's minds, is the interruption to our children's education, and the growing disparity between the haves and have-nots. As you know, we've got awful incidences of child poverty on the Isle of Wight, and I had a email exchange with the cabinet member on the weekend, and he informed me that 400 children had been given laptops. But I know that I think we're about 7,000 children that are deemed to be in poverty on the island, and I'm just very, very concerned about this growing divide between, because there was a report out this morning which I was reading where, showing that people, families in these sort of lower ends of income, are struggling the most, not only with their time and capacity and ability to help their children, but the amount of the equipment that's needed. They just don't have the equipment, and many children are working off their parents' phones, and they're eating up all their data because all this video streaming is extremely data rich. So what are we doing about getting broadband to these families? It's a real concern. I mean, in the report we talk about education, about Peach, and the sustainability of the Peach programme, but it's very light touch on the long-term effects of this awful pandemic upon our children, especially our children who are in poverty. And that, to me, should be the number one on every single report. about our children. We've got our young people here, our NEETs, they're mentioned, but even that, the Kickstarter program isn't really happening, is it, at the moment? Let's face it. So many businesses aren't able to continue. I mean, myself, I put myself down for two Kickstarter. We can't do anything at the moment. You know, that could be until spring, summertime. We just can't. Just not able to take anyone on. So I think that's, you know, it's very sobering, but it's also very, very concerning. You know, I'm lucky I've had my education. I had books, you know, but now it's all different. And I think, you know, the Isle of Wight, you know, I know back in June we were pointed out by the Institute of Fiscal Studies about that us and Torbay would be the places that really do struggle. But this second lockdown, with the impact on our children's education, is absolutely terrifying for their futures. So I really want to know, what are we doing to bridge this digital divide, support families, and more importantly, make sure they've got broadband, because that is just as important as having electricity and water running into your house these days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so did anyone want to pick up on those points raised by Councillor Jones?
Well, I'm happy to comment. Obviously, I don't know the detail that Councillor Jones-Evans has been raising. It is somewhat difficult because, of course, schools have a lot more local power now, and they also have the funding. And I guess that if there are families that come to their attention that don't have sufficient equipment to deliver what they need to, then I guess they might be able to help through PTA funds and so forth. What we can do is, and perhaps if officers would make a note of this, we could ask Councillor Paul Brading, who is our Cabinet Member for Education, to give a bit of detail about what is available in terms of device capacity and anything that he is aware of where children having their education damaged because they don't have access to these devices. And of course, we also have the problem that if you're living in a town, you've generally got fairly quick broadband, but we've got many villages where it's incredibly slow and unreliable, and obviously there's very little we can do immediately to help on that. But if we can get a comment from Councillor Brading for you as to where that is, that might give you some reassurance as to what's going on. I do know that head teachers and our education staff are working very hard to try and cover those points.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go on to Councillor Quirk, I think probably Councillor Peace may come in on this one. Is that okay with you, Gary?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. With regards, Councillor Jones-Evans, the issue of broadband. Obviously, we've got Wight Fibre that are rolling out their own broadband as far and as wide as they can across the island, and they're doing an extraordinary job of that. And that's one of the things that I keep banging on about, is how important digital transformation is for the economy in general, but specifically this island, because we're an information-based economy. And if we need and we want high quality, high paying jobs, then we're going to have to get super fast broadband out to every single household. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen overnight. Wight Fibre, as I say, are doing a fantastic job of rolling out, and they are getting there, but it's going to be a little while yet before we're in every home, or in the vast majority of homes. And there's not an awful lot we can do up to that point. Coming on to...
I need him to... What's wrong with Blaze? Why is he screaming so much?
And obviously then coming on to the other issue of
I'm going to cry
laptops.
in a minute.
I know from... I'm a governor at the Isle of Wight Free School. There was a scheme that was out where the individual schools could apply for funding for laptops, but the parents had to approach the schools, and then the schools would facilitate that. So that might be something to put back to the people you're talking to, because the schools have got the budgets, or at least did have the budgets, to help that. Now, I know that's not going to, again, it's not going to help everybody, because there's still a problem of data usage, etc., etc. But we will do everything we can. But it's going to be very, very difficult. And this also brings on to the big argument that was going around certainly the last few weeks as to why our children need to be in school. Pandemic, understanding and all that kind of stuff, and the fact that we've got a new virus and a new strain of the virus, but it is essential that schools can operate in a COVID safe fashion, and it is absolutely essential that as soon as we possibly can, we get all of our children back into school, because not least because of their educational needs, but for their mental health and their social well-being. That's where they need to be. And that's got to be the critical priority. And I know government are looking at that, and I know that there's been talks about vaccinations for teachers and so on and so forth. With all these measures, we will do as a council, as an authority, as much as we possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pease. Councillor Jones-Evans, there's a supplementary there. You need to unmute, Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. It was really just to highlight, my question was about the affordability of broadband, not necessarily being available, but the fact that students are using their parents' pay-as-you-go devices, and it's very, very, very expensive. So right here and now, children cannot access their education, as is their right. And I think that's what I'm trying to highlight. Yes, we want everyone back at school, of course we do, but at the moment we're not allowed. So this is just highlighting that particular issue. Whether we could get dongles for school children, maybe do a deal with Wi-Fi, but I don't know. There's bigger brains out there than mine, but sure there must be a will, something that we can sort of put to schools, who obviously, as you know, as you said, that they're the ones who know which pupils are in greatest need. Thank you, Chair.
Point taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor Quirk.
Yeah, that's come from a slightly different angle. Over the last 3.5 years, this committee, a Policy and Scrutiny Committee, has done a lot on policy and not a lot on scrutiny. But this is something that I feel our response to COVID does need serious scrutiny. It looks to me that we've got a pretty comprehensive plan in front of us. But, and there is a big but, we're into the second phase of that now. We haven't got any information that says how well the first phase went. And at this stage, what's going to happen in the third phase, I think, is anyone's guess. I would have thought it would be much more worthwhile to take the third column and to actually give us a report of what's happening and how it's going, and when things are completed. And I have to say, I like to have documents that say who's responsible for something to make it happen. When nobody's responsible, usually nobody takes responsibility for it, and that's not a good thing. So I would actually like to see a document that gives us an update on where we're going, how we're going, what's working, what isn't working. Because if it's not working, maybe we should be considering the policy implications for things that might work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Quirk. Did Mr. Chris Ashman or Councillor Hutchinson want to come back in on that one?
I'm happy to respond on that. I mean, you're quite right, Chris. We, as well as actually doing things, we need to report what we've done and how we've done it. I think the difficulty we've had, certainly over the last 3 weeks or so, is that this second wave has been a bit of a tsunami, and we have staff that we have now had to redeploy. We have got some more staff who are self-isolating. We've got some staff who have had to retrain, and so there's huge pressure on everyone. I would like to see us get to the point where we can say we have done this, we've done that, we've done the other. At the moment, every single aspect of the council's operation has been badly affected by this second wave. And actually, I do have a real worry about some of our staff who are they're getting very, very tired with trying to do the amount of work and lots of change. So, for example, you take the IT staff who would normally just about coping. Now with everybody working from home, that's a much bigger problem. We don't actually have extra resources, so we've had to divert resources. We're getting a lot more people phoning through to us through the call centre, so we've had to put capacity there. And of course, with this next wave of grants, we've had to make sure that there's staff available to actually get those out to people as fast as we can. So we've concentrated, I think, on getting the job done, but I do agree with you that as we move forward through this issue, that we should then be in a position of saying, well, that's what we've done, that's how we've done it. That would probably anyway go to the Health and Wellbeing Board, because that's where where our response goes to. But we can always make sure that that this committee is copied into that. I see Chris is nodding. I don't know, Chairman, whether he wants to add anything to that or just accept. Thank you.
No, thanks. Just a brief overview of the plan up to the 3 months. Give confidence to Councillor Quirk and the other members of the committee. We've made progress on that 3-month period. I think what Councillor Hutchinson is rightly referring to is that moving into that 3 to 12 month section of the plan, there is a need for us to consider how far and how fast we can move now on that 3 to 12 month action plan, given the impact of this third lockdown and how the uncertainty of how long that will last. But Councillor Hutchins is quite right, and Councillor Quirk also. The additional narrative on progress and outcome will be provided to Health and Wellbeing Board and can be copied to this committee.
Yeah, if I can just add, except that the Health and Wellbeing Board is an appropriate route for this, but in terms of scrutiny, they do not provide scrutiny, and there is a requirement for us to have scrutiny of what's going on, and this is either here or corporate scrutiny is the place that you should have the scrutiny, so it should come here. Yep. In addition to the Health and Wellbeing Board.
Yep. And I can say, Chairman, that if any member has got specific questions about any element, because this is such a broad brush, there's an impact on communities, there's an impact on health, there's an impact right across the board, and obviously there's an economic impact. So it's quite difficult to know what sort of questions to answer. And we will copy things to this committee, but if you'd like to give us a steer on what particular elements you want to scrutinise or dig into deeper, we'll be happy to respond.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Councillor Quirk, did you want to come back, or you're okay?
No, when I was going through this paper, it's covered with questions on just about every other item. I will pass it on to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Councillor Jones, a question to Mr. Ashman regarding Let's Buy Local campaign.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I noticed that that has actually finished now, that campaign, and I was just wondering, now we're in another phase where there's lots of local deliveries. Lots of businesses have stepped up during the last sort of 8 months and now are online. I was just wondering whether that was a programme that was going to be continued. If it was it deemed to be a success? So that's the one question. Second question for you, while we're talking about the economy, is there's no mention of the grant that the Solar LEP had put forward this year, but I think there was two tranches. The one we just heard about today successfully, some businesses, but there was one back in October. And I was just wondering whether that was specifically the Kickstarter tourism one, whether you know how much money was drawn down to the island, how many businesses are successful. So I think that's quite an important indicator that people are very interested to know how much money individual businesses are getting from the LEP. Yeah, so that's my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ashman?
Thanks. We're waiting on an evaluation report for the Let's Buy Local campaign, and that will then be reported to the economic partnership, and any recommendations then on next steps would be considered at that forum. But clearly, the quality and the approach that was taken, and the number of businesses that were given the appropriate coverage, was extremely timely in relation to the time of year in which spend was going to take place, and also the impacts of the various lockdowns. So obviously the economic partnership will take a view on the relative success of that campaign, and the continuing effort associated with promoting local expenditure. And again, Councillor is absolutely right in terms of the recovery plan, acknowledging and reflecting the wider regional investment that's going into recovery. And I can obviously commit to getting the necessary intelligence from the LEP regarding the recent allocations that they've made to different businesses, in headline terms at least, to provide an update to the committee.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Thumbs up there, so we'll take those on. So just to rewind slightly on the remote, the remote learning, the teaching. So can we be clear? So any concerns as regards to that to go to Councillor Paul Brading for a response? Thank you very much. Okay, members. So if we're all done with that, I mean,
Chair, if I got one more thing to say, sorry, I beg your pardon, I meant to say it when I was on a minute ago. Just a quick update. I don't know if Mr. Ashman's got the figures, but because I'm part of the Island Card programme in my businesses, we had an email just before Christmas where they had sold 70 cards. So I don't know actually what the value of the sales were, but I think that was quite encouraging during obviously what we're going through at the moment. So I think we should be pleased that we've sold so many cards, and they can be used online as well. So that's encouraging. So I just wanted to update you. I don't know if Chris knows any more than that, but he probably does.
I haven't got the total amount, and again I can circulate that for information.
Okay, thank you very much. So just an agreement from my committee then. So can we say that the medium-term recovery plan is noted, the actions contained within it be monitored at future meetings of this committee? So if we're all in agreement, I mean, if no one agrees with that, just let me know. If not, we'll take that forward as agreed.
Yeah, and just to reaffirm, obviously our great interest in our children in need, basically, with the disparity in learning outcomes during lockdown. I think that would be my takeaway from this discussion.
Yep, that's fine. That's duly noted. Thank you very much, Councillor Jones-Evans. Okay, agenda item 5, strategy for reduction in the council's net carbon emissions. So that's pages 21 to 86 on your information packs. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Natasha Dix will come in on that. Am I correct? Or Steve, beg your pardon, Councillor Hastings.
Yes, I'm sure Natasha will want to speak on this, but I just wanted to say a few words first. Words of thanks, mostly, for hard work of officers during this time. Back in July last year, when we hadn't even thought about a pandemic, Councillor Lilly and I sat down and wrote together a motion for full council, and that was for a declaration of climate emergency, and I'm very pleased to say that members here and those not here tonight supported that, and that of course meant officers then had a lot more work to do. And you mentioned Natasha. Well, all officers have worked hard on this, but Natasha has particularly worked hard on this, I would like to say. And most human beings believe there are 24 hours in a day. Somehow, I think Natasha has 48 in her days. Writing this not just a strategy, as you've heard me say many times before. I like to see an action plan as well. Well, we have an action plan, and that's fabulous to see. There's a lot of hard work gone into this, and not only that, Natasha runs the Environment and Sustainability Forum. Oh, and a little thing on the side called a waste contract with Amy. Seeing through the fruition of the building of the mechanical treatment plant at Forest Road, the energy from waste, which is near to completion, hopefully by next spring, and creating a booking system for the tips to keep them open. So not many things to do. So that said, I know that's as much as I would say on that for now, but I just want to say a big thank you to all the officers and to yourself as well, Chairman, Councillor Quirk, as part of the task and finish group on this, for that hard work that you've put in as well. And with that, I will pass it over for questions to Natasha.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hastings. So, members, you open it up. Any Councillor Quirk?
I too think that this is a very comprehensive document. I'm very pleased to see it. I think Councillor Hastings will know what I'm going to say. This needs to be broken down into action plans with key responsibilities given to people. As I said before, if nobody's responsible, nobody does it. And I would like to see this actually broken down to individual area plans that work to define who's going to do what to make it all happen. There's a lot of wonderful aspiration here, but it's got to actually turn into actual doing.
Thank you very much. Either Councillor Hastings or Natasha, did you want to come in on that?
Oh, I will. Hi, Councillor Kirk. Thank you for that comment. That is, as we have said, this is the final draft document, and if we're all happy in the direction that it's going, we will now break it down into that, as you asked, those areas for who's going to be responsible for delivering what, and how we're going to move it forward over the coming years.
Okay, thank you very much, Natasha.
Yeah, I thought they would be there.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Medland, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And so sorry about being late today, that I'm rejoining.
Okay.
I just want to say I'm really impressed with this report. I think it's an excellent summary of the sort of overall strategic situation that we have in terms of the climate crisis. But I would like to see a lot more detail. I understand now from Natasha that this is a document that's evolving over time, but I would like to see a lot more specific, practical solutions to some of the problems here. And some things that sprang to mind with me on page 46, we have the 3 largest sources of emissions on the Isle of Wight are, I think, lists commercial, industrial, road transport, and domestic heating. Well, yeah, we already have some things already in place. There's I immediately thought of the rights of way improvement plan. Now there is actually some funding available from central government for improvements in rights of way or in cycling and walking. I'm really hoping we can try and get some capital so that we can actually implement the rights of way improvement plan, because it's been sitting around doing almost nothing now since 2008 when it was drawn up. It's very detailed. It's already there, basically. We've already got an excellent plan there. Another point on the commercial side, how we get the businesses to install more solar power, for example. We have to have a new interconnector to the mainland. This is absolutely critical. That's got to go in here somehow. We've got to have a way of exporting our surplus solar energy to the mainland so that it can be so planning can then allow people to put it into their planning applications, etc. So I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. I'm probably out of date on that one completely. But domestic heating seems to be is obviously a huge issue in terms of the whole carbon problem, and it's also a problem of poverty. And it seems to be an absolute priority that we get some, hopefully, some government grants there. I know there's a little bit of money being made available for this, so that we can start to roll out some form of domestic heating. And if we can't get the money from central government, could we consider some sort of loan scheme? Because the people who get the insulation will benefit by having lower energy costs. They should be able to pay off over a long period of time, a long period of debt. So I mean, I'm just thinking there must be some way of moving that forward. It's been an issue now for many, many years, and we don't seem to make a huge amount of progress with it. And the other comment I wanted to make was about the huge amount of carbon involved with the farming economy and the natural environment. And I'm thinking about these new farm grants that are replacing the common agricultural policy. And if we could somehow develop a cooperation with people like Natural Enterprise, National Farmers Union, National Trust, landowners, and it's called down the CLA, the Landowners Association. But I think if we get some sort of coordination there and we try to help people roll out more of these, for example, reforestation and rewilding projects, and just help each other get money, basically get grants and coordinate the response. I think that could be very, very useful as well. I just want to make those comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Medland. I know that Natasha Dix did actually respond to you by email. So I know that Councillor Jones-Evans and Councillor Ward would want to come in, but before that, did either Natasha or Councillor Hastings want to come in on Councillor Medland's remarks?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Yeah.
Just one thing I was hearing there was about fuel poverty, and I should just say here and remind everybody that there is the Island Homes Grant, Green Island Homes Grant, available right now. Look on the website, all the details are on there, the application form is on there. Get it now, because otherwise that money is going back to government by April. I have put it out in various publications recently, and this is a good time to say it. I think everybody should be checking that out.
Thank you very much.
Natasha wanted to say anything else.
Only to further support what Steve has said, there are green home grants available from the government already at this point in time, and there are also the Warm Up Wight free insulation availability if anyone wishes to look at the Warm Up Wight scheme, and you can get the insulation replaced or installed into your home, most of which is free. I've had it done in my house. I've heard a lot of people have said they're worried that they're going to get a hard sell at the door when people come, which is why they've not used those schemes. So the schemes are available out there, particularly with insulation, which will make a huge impact to a lot of homes, reducing both their carbon, but also increasing the well-being for those residents who don't need to live in a cold home and can have free insulation. So I would urge anyone who is struggling with their insulation to look at those schemes that are available.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Jones-Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see the strategy, and there is a huge amount of work, as you can see, and comprehensive. I mean, it's really divided up into, I think every area of island life is pretty much covered here. As I have an action plan and the responsibility for each area, I think, is, as Councillor Quirk said, that's going to be really important, and then we can obviously monitor that and also help do our bit to do that as well. So on the strategy, I didn't see anything about green impact until back to page 29 for the green impact scheme. Unfortunately, we've had that for 2.5 years, so perhaps I feel a little bit disappointed that we haven't managed to do more with the scheme, and we have had 60 businesses engage with it in the first year, and we struggled slightly because we did the second launch in January last year, 31st of January. So obviously it's been a bit difficult going into lockdown shortly afterwards to move forward with that. But we still have been having meetings, and we've got a new program manager. This is a a scheme that I think we really need to do all we can to push. It's free for businesses to join, and it's a comprehensive way of looking at all areas of your business. You can be a very, very small one-man business up to, got Vicoma involved in it, who are Gold Award winners. And I think this is something we really need, because this is partly funded by the Isle of Wight Council and partly by individual Isle of Wight businesses. So we really, really need to push this up to the fore. And I guess my question is that, we're looking, it says on page 29, we're looking at, embedding it more in council departments from this year, but we've had it since June 2018. So my question was, why haven't we really made the most of the opportunity that's in front of us, what has been in front of us for the past 2.5 years? So that's my first question. I've got another question on planning. I don't know whether you wanted me to ask that now, Chair, or wait for a response for the first question.
Okay, I'm quite mindful. There's a Councillor Quirk, Councillor Ward, and then Councillor Churchman that like to come in. So if I can just give either Councillor Hastings or Natasha Dix a chance to respond to that particular question, and then we'll do the other 3 questions and then yours, if that's okay. Okay.
I'll just respond quickly to the Green Impact Programme. The Green Impact Programme is something that I think is an absolutely fantastic programme we should be promoting with internally and externally as much as we can. Now that we know that we can certainly keep that programme moving forward on the island. And I agree with Julie, it's something that we do need to work more on. It has been particularly difficult with the council responding to COVID to try and expect officers in different council departments at this time to start assessing their buildings, as the buildings have been closed and we've been diverted doing other work. But it is certainly going to be at the forefront of the behaviour change work that we're going to be doing in the coming months.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Quirk, please.
I'd actually said my bit.
You have. Okay, I beg your pardon. We've got a back. So Councillor Ward and then Councillor Churchman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a couple of really comments, and I'm don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising. I'm just offering alternatives. The figures for transport, it runs about 25%, and I've always thought to myself, the poor old motorists gets blamed for this most of the time. But I have always thought to myself, actually, why are we persecuting the motorists? What we should be doing is taking away the need to make the journey. Okay, if he's commuting. And with the COVID lockdowns, actually, that has really come to light. We've taken away the need to make the journey to drive into work and things like that 5-6 days a week. And I just think maybe we ought to consider that as an improving factor now on pollution. And we're halfway there in the change of the mindset now, because we just accept that yes, we can do that. We don't need to go to the office every day of the week necessarily. So I think we ought to promote that idea more, basically. And the other question I had was about the actual statistics. Were they average statistics, or were they particularly island statistics in terms of transport?
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Natasha.
Good evening, Ian, Councillor Ward. Yes, I do absolutely agree with you that sustainable transport and a move to sustainable transport, removing the need to make car journeys unnecessarily is a way forward. But and yes, the statistics, the numbers for carbon use within this document are specific to the island.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Natasha. Okay, so we've got Councillor. Beg your pardon. So, yes, beg your pardon, Vanessa. Councillor Churchman, and just before you go, Councillor Hastings, is that right? So, Councillor Churchman, need to unmute Vanessa.
I sent an email around this afternoon regarding planning and solar panels, and I know we can't enshrine it into our own planning regulations, but why are we allowing large developments without solar panels when we are 20 years behind the rest of Europe? I would like to see this council send something up to London and say, come on, think about this. We have got to introduce solar panels as a necessity, and they've got to somehow go on the statute book. It makes me laugh that we now have a marine conservation around the Isle of Wight, and anybody who lives within, I think it's 3-4 miles of the Solent, the developer has to pay £150 towards that particular scheme. I mean, I ask you, I believe in what we're doing, and yet solar panels, as I've said, are, to me, are such a necessity, are being ignored. The Isle of Wight has the highest sunshine rate in the country. Forget Bournemouth and Eastbourne. We have the highest sunshine rate, and we would benefit so much from a proper solar panel policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Churchman. So again, did either Councillor Hastings or Natasha want to come in on that one? Or actually, Councillor Quirk?
Oh, Councillor Quirk.
Yes, wearing my chair planning hat. The government doesn't have plans to make it mandatory to have solar panels, but it does have plans to make it mandatory to have carbon neutral houses. And to be carbon neutral, you will probably have to have some sort of solar panel, either for electricity or for water heating, in order to achieve that. So we will get there.
Thank you very much. Natasha, did you want to come back in?
Only iterating the same point that Chris Quirk has just made, and that our revolving new island planning strategy that is being worked on by the team does include those lowering carbon and energy consumptions and new development incentives, and we'll be working closely with that team to ensure that we are developing two strategies at the same time that will work within that direction of ensuring that we do have as much renewable energy as possible.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones-Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. I did just put a quick message in the chat box just to come back onto what Councillor Ward said, because most people on the Isle of Wight, healthcare is our biggest employer, and then comes retail. That necessitates travel, but we want to be sustainable travel. It's not about bashing the motorist. It's about having other options that are more carbon neutral and give you more well-being as well. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there. But my question was really about I'm very interested in the urban rewilding and the green schemes, and I think that's absolutely important that we use any opportunity to be able to have these pocket parks. In fact, in Newport, I've got the new toilets are finished now in Post Office Lane. I've got a green roof on there, but we only put a green roof on there not because we had to, but because we wanted to. And I think this is really important. This is where planning comes into it. We have to have really, really very sound and defensible policies in our new island plan. This is what we want to happen, because developers, especially if in an urban environment where every space is very, very expensive, we have to make sure that we have we're very clear and it's policy led, that this is what we expect in all our new developments. It's very, very important. I'm looking at some developments at the minute, and there's not even anywhere for someone to put their bin at the moment. There's nothing, no amenity space whatsoever. They just want to maximise the dwelling space and never mind about green corridors. I mean, it's in our island plan at the moment about how we want to have green corridors, but it doesn't seem to have any teeth. So if that's one thing we can, I guess my question is, what can we do as a council to ensure that these aspirations there, which are brilliant. I mean, I love the fact of the green vertical gardens on wall. Like, that's fantastic. But we need to make sure that it's the expectation on the island. We're not going to expect anything less than the best. especially given as we're a biosphere. We've got to lead by example.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So, did anyone else want to come in on that before I wrap this up?
Chairman, can I just say something very briefly, and that is that when it comes to the motor car, the combustion engine as we know it is heading for museums. And I know this might upset yourself, Chairman, but those combustion engines will come out perhaps for exhibitions and show days. And we are going, and we are going electric. And the sooner we can, the better. But of course, if we're all going to end up going electric, we have to have the infrastructure. So it's really important that we go, push on and get the infrastructure ready for it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You make a very valid point, Councillor Hastings. Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments from members, so we can make an agreement between this committee, and can we recommend submission to Cabinet and then to full council for ratification of this particular strategy? So if I don't, there's no one against.
Chair, I mean, what I would like to put as a sort of an addendum, amendment to that would be that we would want all powers given to our island, our emerging island plan, to support this very, very important document, this strategy, this 10-year strategy. I think I think it's really important. Unless we have the planning system aligned with it, then some of these things are going to be very hard to achieve.
Okay, you make a valid point. I mean, Chris, did you want to come in? Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I think they're two completely separate issues. I think we can commend this to Cabinet. And I think we can also point out that we want this to be integral to the planning and strategy. But I think that there's two actual decisions there, not one. But I support both of them.
I tend to agree, actually, but so I will need an agreement. So the recommend submission to Cabinet and then to full council for ratification. If there's no one in disagreement.
I agree with that.
So it looks as if we're all in agreement. Okay. Is that agreed, committee? Yes, we got nods all round. Councillor.
Yeah, I'll have my say at full council then.
Absolutely. Okay, excellent stuff. Sorry. Yes, I mean, certainly as regards to this particular strategy and the COVID recovery plan and the work plan for this particular committee. So that will be reviewed in 12 months. Is that correct? Yep. So we'll put that on our work plan to be reviewed again and brought back to this committee within the next or for the next 12 months. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Quirk.
Can we ask when the final plan with all the responsibilities is actually completed, if that happens to be in less than 12 months, can we actually review it at that point?
Yes, certainly, of course we can. That's been duly noted. Thank you very much. I mean, on a personal level, before we just go on to the next item, Councillor Hastings has said regards to the amount of work that's gone into this particular strategy. I would like to thank Natasha and Colin Rowland, of course, and Councillor Hastings. I mean, this is a tremendous piece of work that when it comes to fruition and when it's approved, which I'm sure that it will be at full council for the future, that's going to be a real boost for this particular council. So thank you very much for that work. Okay. Right, agenda item 6. So that's the task and finish group, that's the speed limit work we done. I mean, I won't read that out verbatim. All members would have had a copy of that particular item. So I just need to open it up to members. And I think Jane Dando may be in on the call as well. So if I take any questions from members, and if Jane would like to make any comments, that would be great. So open up to members, please. If there are any questions. Beg your pardon. Tig, nice to hear you. Councillor Outlaw.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for being a couple of minutes late. I was trying to log in through my company Teams login instead of the Isle of Wight Council one. No yeah, for me, there's it was a very interesting report from the Task and Finish group, which I'm grateful for. There are a couple of key points for me in it, and they were really made by the police. So whilst I do support the use of 20-mile-an-hour limits, particularly in built-up urban areas where they're around schools and residential areas, I'm mindful of the fact that they need to be applied in a considered way, and it was very important to note, I think, that the police advised that there's very little resource for enforcement. So when we're considering a 20-mile-an-hour limit, it's useful if those restrictions are self-enforcing, and the use of speed bumps is a way of self-enforcing a 20-mile-an-hour limit. However, they do have a cost. They cost a lot of money to put in. They cost a lot of money to maintain. So any decision has got to be taken in a holistic approach has got to be taken to any decisions relating to any changes to the speed limits. I also noted that the police had advised that they objected to some of the changes to the reductions in Apps Heath, and that again is something which surprised me somewhat. When the Apps Heath changes were made, I was surprised to see that they'd been put in the way that they had. And I wasn't at all surprised to see that they'd been objected to. I think when these things are being considered, it's too easy to take an approach of let's change it because people have said that it's a problem. We need real evidence that there are issues in certain areas before we make changes. We need to involve the town and parish councils, particularly, I mean, the town and parish councils will have a good understanding and knowledge of where there are key problems, and if there is a need to put in infrastructure which is going to be costly, then we can we should look to work with town and parish councils for perhaps matched funding at least of any schemes that need to be changed. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Outlaw. And just to make a comment regarding the Apps Heath, and I know Councillor Medland had corresponded on that. I mean, there is a particular difference with that. We're talking of a road that had historically a 50-mile-an-hour limit that was brought down to 30-mile-an-hour, which slightly differentiates from the 20-mile-an-hour. But that said, I mean, as you can see, that the police are looking into that and gathering evidence as to why there are more reported accidents after that particular limit had been reduced. So you do raise a good point. As soon as we do have that information, we will share that out on this particular committee. Thank you. Are there any more? Yes, thank you. Councillor Medland, and then Councillor Jones-Evans. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad you saw my thing there. Just want to agree with Councillor Outlaw there about I think the bumps are a dreadful idea. I think they must take an awful lot more energy to clamber over and, you know, do more damage. I can't see them being very useful. I think there are other engineering solutions, much more simple ones, which involve painting or non-painting of roads in certain ways. In the Channel Islands, they put a line on each side of a country lane to indicate there's a single carriageway, and it's indicate that it's shared use. And that to me would be a very obvious way of telling people slow down in a, you know, on dangerous roads. We do have a very high death rate or accident rate on the island. Not to talk about accident rates, they're awfully badly compiled. As I understand, the police only report accidents where they've actually got they've actually written down the number of the car. You know, so it's not like any accident is recorded. It's quite specific ones, so they tend to be under-recorded traffic incidents. I do very much agree with the idea of local councils being involved. Here in Freshwater, we had a scheme to redesign the High Street, what was called Avenue Road, and it was a joint effort between the parish council and Island Roads and the Isle of Wight Council together. We produced a really good scheme, widening pavements, making safe crossings. It was a really dramatic improvement, and that I'm sure should be looked at as an example to be copied in other parts of the island. And it could be a solution to our funding problem for this, because I know there is no money in highways for these kind of improvements. We have to look at innovative approaches here. And I just want to make one other point, and that was a kind of criticism of query really. On page 88 of my document, very bottom, it says no evidence that suggests 20 miles an hour speed limits have reduced casualty rates, and these were very low in the first place. I don't agree with either of those points. According to public health, we do have a high relative number of accidents on the island. That's because we have such a funny old road network. Most people travel on much faster, straighter roads than we have. But secondly, I have seen evidence that 20 miles an hour is safer. It just causes less accidents and less fatalities and less serious injuries, and it's kind of common sense to think that through. So those are the things I wanted to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Medland. Councillor Jones-Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Medland, for picking that line up, because I too have seen plenty of evidence where casualties have been reduced because of 20-mile-per-hour errors. So I want to pick up on a couple of things. You mentioned expense. If you go for a signs and lines approach, that's not putting in expensive traffic calming, which actually isn't the best solution. It's effective, but it's not actually the best solution for a neighbourhood to have lots of traffic calming for various reasons. But it actually costs about the same as a cup of coffee to put in a signs and lines approach per head of population. And of course, don't forget, it affects every single citizen. So you've got one intervention, but every single citizen in that area or on this island, if you want to talk about the island, it benefits from it. So it's the intervention that has a universal benefit, and it allows people to have more confidence to go out and about in their locality. And I think we are looking at the urban environments, built up environments at the moment, residential streets, town village centres, and that's why I feel quite cross almost about the attention the Apps Heath thing has been given, because it's a complete red herring, nothing to do with 20 mile whatsoever. And it's really, I think, I would like that taken out of the report, because it's actually focusing on something that's actually nothing to do with the topic. I understand the police are under resourced. Many places are under resourced, but that still doesn't stop them. One of their remits is to keep society safe. And if this is an intervention that just keeps society safe, and it's a law, well then there must be some liability on for some light touch. But I think what we learned mostly, I think, from the task and finish time we had, it was very good contributions from everybody. I'm not belittling anyone said at all, but it was about it's that consistency we need. Now you drive through Brading, and you're 20 mile per hour, drive through Gods for 20 mile per hour. Now, so why are those two places more special than going through the middle of Knighton or going down New Street in Newport? You know, there's no difference at all. They're still full of people, vulnerable people, that are having to live with lots of motor cars around them. So for me, it's that inconsistency that actually is one of our greatest, it's a hurdle to overcome. Because if everyone knows, oh, I'm in a residential street, oh, I'm in a village centre, oh, it's 20, then you get that into your mind. It's changing that mindset, like we had to change our mindsets from drink driving many years ago. You know, remember people should say, oh, my car knows its way home. It was a joke, but you know, not funny, because people die. And the similarly with seat belts. Oh, I don't need a seat belt, but now you would just do it as a matter of course. It's another part of that journey, that public road safety journey. And you know, Councillor Besson, you point out yourself that you know the injury rates and the severity of injury drops dramatically when you go from a 30 to a 20, and that's what we talk about. Talk about people's lives, talk about people's well-being, talk about people's perception of their safety, and that's why it's really important that we continue this work, working alongside all our colleagues to make this island a safer place for everybody, every single citizen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones-Evans. I know Councillor Quirk would like to come in, but before that, I'll let Councillor Shirley Smart in first, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I continue with what Julie, Councillor Jones-Evans was saying? I do appreciate that the police are very stretched, and I know they did object and didn't want the God's Hill. But quite frankly, psychologically, if you've got the signs up which say 20 miles an hour or 30 or 40, I mean, I've got a road in my ward that the cars just keep going through the fences, and that is because we cannot get a 40 mile an hour. But I won't go into that at the moment. And so I would like to say that I think it is important that we have the signs put up, we have the 20 mile an hour, and also the thing that over the years I think psychologically is very good, and that is the signs that tell you how many miles an hour you're going. I think, okay, yes, I'm not too keen on bumps everywhere, but signs which remind people how many miles an hour they are going, psychologically, I do feel should be used more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Quirk, then Councillor Outlaw, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to remove a perception that the deaths on the island are urban and pedestrian, because they're not. The vast majority of road traffic accident deaths on the island are cars and motorcycles on high-speed roads, not urban. I'm not saying that to undermine the idea of the 20 is plenty, but the actual deaths on the island are not in urban areas. I think in the last 5 years there was one recorded, and that was in Button.
Thank you. Councillor Outlaw.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just another comment I'd like to make, which is relevant to the carbon emissions issue as well. The country is trying to move towards more electrical vehicles. And one thing which I experienced having driven a hybrid vehicle is that at 20 miles an hour or under, the amount of people who'd step out in front of my vehicle whilst I was driving along Regent Street in Shanklin or similar, they just don't notice that there's a vehicle coming, and they don't look round to check all too often. It happens so many times. At 30 miles an hour, the vehicle is more likely to actually not be running on battery and actually running on petrol, and people would hear it. So perhaps a little bit of, as we move further and further down the line of electric vehicles, there's certainly a little bit of research is required as to the noise levels of vehicles at different speeds, and or ensuring that electrical vehicles in the future are actually made to make a sound, so that people don't step out in front and that our accident rates go up rather than down, which is what we really want.
Thank you, Councillor. You actually raise a very good point with that, and I am aware that the ROSPA, the Royal Society for Protection of Accidents, are been alerted to the fact that you're right, electric vehicles under the speed of 20 are totally silent, and they're looking at it's quite simple. The technology is there to actually insert an artificial noise to that particular electric vehicle, so pedestrians are aware. But I mean, without representative from Island Roads or any technical expert here, I can't give any more information than that. But I know that that's quite high on the agenda with future electric car manufacturing. I mean, the other point to consider is, and I know that we're looking at speed limits right here, right now, future manufacturing of all cars, whether they be electric or petrol or diesel, will include a speed limiter that's triggered at certain points. Now, again, the infrastructure needs to be in place, and of course, not everyone across the UK, and certainly on the Isle of Wight, will own a brand new car in 2022 or straight away. So there's going to be that phase out period anyway, where that particular piece of technology actually becomes very useful to us. So thank you for that. Is there any more questions from members? Councillor Jones-Evans, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was really, I was just going to go towards the recommendation, if that was helpful to add my support to the recommendations as set out in the paper. I personally would like the aptitude thing taken out, because I think that is a bit of a red herring. It's not to do with the topic, but that's just what I feel. So, but I just wanted to commend the recommendations. Propose them.
Thank you very much. Just 1 moment. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, yeah, when you read that, the APSEIF was just comment from the Hampshire Constabulary. They're not listed as the recommendations. I mean, yeah, Councillor Churchman.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I would like to add to all of this is that we have so many blind spots on our roads on the island, so it wouldn't matter what speed you were doing, you cannot see round corners because of overhanging trees, because of overhanging hedges, and all our rural roads are quite narrow. Smallbrook Junction in my ward has one of the highest, I think has the highest accident rate on the island, and it is due to be reconfigured hopefully next year. But the reason that has the accidents isn't so much the speed, it is because of the blind corners on it, which means that when you're approaching that roundabout, which is just a little round bit in the middle, which I don't approve of anyway, you cannot see what is, for example, coming down the hill from Carter's Road. And this is what causes quite a few accidents. So having a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in town, I think, is excellent. A policeman told me donkeys years ago, speed kills. And he was a motorcycle policeman. But I do feel on our rural roads, you come round a corner, and even if you're travelling at 20 miles an hour round the corner, you're faced with a horse, a bicycle, somebody walking. And it is lack of vision that creates an awful lot of, not an awful lot, but quite a few accidents. And I'll quote, the last one to quote is the road between Haven Street and Ryde, where the big stables used to be. At one time, that has a couple of double S-bends on it, and at some stage, quite a few years ago now, they took out the hedgerows along one side. Immediately, the accidents dropped. So let's focus just on 20 miles an hour, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I can see your comments there, Councillor Jones-Evans, but I mean, they were valid. They were comments from the Hampshire Constabulary that form part of our task and finish group discussion. The recommendations, as you can see on the paper, 1 through to 4, page 90 and 91, is the recommendations that we need to agree as a committee so we can submit that to the relevant cabinet member for infrastructure and transport. So
yeah, Chair, can I just say, I just think that anyone reading the report, though, would think that Apps Heath is to do with 20 mile per hour, and it's not. I think, like my suggestion, just put it in brackets next to it. This is a 50 to a 30 mile per hour. I think that just helps give it the right correct context. That's all I'm saying. Apart from that, I think I'm happy to go with the recommendation.
That's fine. That's I mean, you are right, but for the sake of a couple of lines in brackets, and we can add that in. Certainly, I know that Democratic officer has agreed with that. So
thank you, Chair. Thank you for your indulgence and keep me quiet. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Motion.
Okay, so members, if we are in full agreement, we'll recommend that to submission. All in agreement by the looks of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Agenda item.
Thank you to everybody who got involved in the task and finish group. There's a lot of people got involved, and a good report that's been written as well by the our officer.
Yeah, I do beg your pardon. And special thanks to yourself, Councillor Jones-Evans, and to Councillor Quirk for contributing. It's very much appreciated. Excellent. Agenda item 7, members, cycling and walking strategy. Now, I believe there's that Mr. Alex Mims or Councillor Ward. Ian.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could just once again just open, and I'll hand over to Mr. Mims. As the document says, I made the delegated decision to approve the local cycling and walking plan, but it was very clear at the time that there wasn't the funding at this point to do everything that we would like to do, and I think that's important to recognise at first. Actually, the COVID funding that was offered to us actually was a bit of a lifeline, because it does allow us to do more. Now, I know that Alec and his team did work up plans during the lockdown and what have you, and some of them were installed. Some of them met with quite strong objections, but we are reviewing all of that, and with the extra money, because Alex was lucky enough to get a second phase of money. You know, we are looking at actually trying to do something really constructive now. We've already started improving the cycle lanes and things like that, because most of them were just paths and what have you. And that work is already ongoing to improve those. But I'll hand over to Alec now, because he's got more of the detail. Thanks, Alec.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ward. I think that provides an excellent context to this. We've also got the author of the delegated paper on this call as well, Lee Matthews. But if I can give an overview of where we're at, and then if the detailed questions, Lee may want to pick up some of those. I mean, as Councillor Ward suggested, we got some funding, councils will remember, from the DFT to carry out these local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, or to create them from the DFT for the Ryde and Newport areas. Now those infrastructure plans were produced and circulated, and the consultation on those was completed. As a result of that, we've obviously got a plan of an aspiration of what we'd like to do in just 2 areas of the Isle of Wight, Ryde and Newport. And as Councillor Ward suggested, whilst we've got the plans and the aspirations, we've yet to find the money to deliver on all of those aspirations. Having said that, those plans we hope will help us draw down funding from the DFT to do some of the works that we want to do. And certainly, as Councillor Ward's alluded to, some of that has been as a result of active travel. So we have got an active travel stage 2 bid with the hope of getting around about 230,000 to carry out works on cycle paths in Newport and Ryde. Having said that, that only covers Newport and Ryde. And the aspiration then is to produce local cycling and walking infrastructure plans for other parts of the island. But as Councillor Ward suggests, we're still waiting for DFT funding to be able to do that. So the work is in transit. I think we've got quite a long way to go to get to where we want to get to. And as Councillor Ward suggested, the issue I think that we've got is funding from the DFT to achieve all of these things. But you know, it's a start, I think, in terms of the progress. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for myself and Lee on that at all.
Members? Councillor Jones-Evans, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very exciting, you know, to be part of the LC Whip consultation, and to see it being signed off last April seemed like a momentous occasion. But on the ground, we really haven't seen much progress. I know we're looking at doing the main cycle path into Newport along Mews Lane, and that does need definitely improving. But it's that cross-town infrastructure that we need. That's what's going to make the difference. That final mile, this final couple of miles, getting people out of their cars and onto their bicycles. That's where we're going to make the difference. And I think that's what the aspiration of the LC Whip was. It really looked at that in depth at the urban areas and how we're going to do that. But it just seems to, we've got the ideas, but then we just hit the block of highways, and that the movement of the motor vehicle comes top. And I just don't see how we're ever going to get over this. You know, look through Newport, and every idea we've come up with, oh, we can't do that because the lorry's got to get through. We can't do that because that's, you know, Mill Street now is a major thoroughfare, which it's not. It's a very, very minor road, but now it's a major thoroughfare because of a mistake that was made in the UDP many years ago. So, you know, I'm a passionate advocate of, you know, 20 miles per hour, getting people out walking and cycling. You know, this is right up my street, but we seem to fail at that final hurdle, and I honestly don't know how we're going to get over it. I really don't. That's my question. How are we going to get over this? How are we going to deliver it? How are we going to deliver our aspirations?
I think that's quite a difficult one, quite a good question, Julie. It's a little bit like, I suppose, parking to some extent, where you go out to consultation on parking increases in charges, and everybody's going to say, no, we don't want it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the council has to make the decision to take that into consideration. There will be some difficult choices that we have to make to improve. We're never going to be able to achieve everything for all people, are we? And if we've got the environmental commitments that we've just talked about, we are going to have to make some difficult decisions, and we're not going to be able to please everybody. So I think for me, the decisions in this area will come from two things: strong leadership and increased resources to carry out those works.
I think you're right. It does come down to leadership. It comes down to being a combined will to make this happen. And sometimes you have to have that bit of pain for that extra gain. You know, we're in a pandemic because perhaps we're not listening to our environment enough, you know. And if we don't make these changes, and we're the generation that is going to make these changes for the generations that are coming behind us. Otherwise, we're in a very, very, very difficult position. So we have to make these brave decisions. And then actually they're not that brave, because all you've got to do is look around Europe and look around other parts of the country. Other places have done it. You know, we haven't come up with a magic idea to transform our lives. You know, only following what other places have managed to do. So it's not difficult. It's not rocket science, but we need to have that commitment and political will. And that's where I think perhaps we're falling down. And you know, you officers need to have that support from members. I feel, and you've got the support from me and Newport and Carrollsbrook Community Council.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jones-Evans. Mr. Minns, did you want to come back in? And I see we have Mr. Lee Matthews with us as well. Is there any comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, good evening, Chairman. All I would add really is that we do have the strategic government policy gear change that came out in 2020 to help the local authority attract funding. Alex is right, we're getting piecemeal bits of DFT funding at the moment, but we are in a good position on the islands. You know, we've got very good local town and parish council links who do support the improvement of walking and cycling. We're getting better at liaising closely with our planning colleagues to ensure Section 106 funding is allocated to walking and cycling. We're getting better at that. We've still got more to do, but I think we're just really waiting now for the government to deliver on this Active Travel 2 across the country after the wobble on Active Travel 1. And the message that I've received that if the country delivers Active Travel 2, then further funding will be available to deliver some of the schemes that's been identified in the LCWIP, but also other aspirations across the island.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any more questions from members to either Mr. Mims? No? That's excellent. Oh, Councillor Jones-Evans, last minute.
One quick question. I'm just wondering whether, Mr. Matthews, whether we better give us an update on the Gunville Greenway, because I do believe that's actually quite a success story. You know, from my doom and gloom a minute ago. So it might be good to have a little bit of good news.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. Yeah, after a bit of a long journey in terms of having identified an aspiration for the Gunville Greenway to get that route out of Newport to the edge of Newport for hopefully a journey across to the West Wight. We've now completed a bit of work behind the primary school there and adjoining now the path and the route alongside Christ the King. So it's one of those good examples where we had a plan and a vision, and it's taken a while to get there, and a few authorisations and approvals from the education sector to get us over the line. But we are there now. And it just goes to show that with a plan and a bit of push, we can get there. So yeah, a good news story there. Good news story.
That's great. Thank you very much. So that is duly noted by this committee. So I do thank you. So we will come straight on to item 8, parking. So I'm guessing that's you as Mr. Mills. Thank you.
Okay, we've got the author of this report on the call, which is Sean Newton as well. In terms of parking places order, I think that you've asked for a verbal update. I think at the time of this agenda, the actual report, which is due to Cabinet on January the 14th, hadn't been published. That report has now been published, and I can give an overview of the parking places order to, obviously, as you've requested. This is also on the agenda next week for corporate scrutiny. And as I said, goes to a Cabinet on January the 14th. Just in terms of reminding people what this paper actually is about, these are the savings that were agreed as a result of changes to car park charges by members back in February 2020 as part of the medium-term financial plan. And they suggested a number of increases to prices and a number of extensions of charges in certain areas, which I'll outline in a moment. Whilst you can agree at a budgetary meeting to make those savings, you can only make those savings in principle. You have to go through this parking places order process and consult the public before you can make a decision. So what this report does, it outlines what the saving suggestions are, and then it outlines the process that we've had to go through for consultation and gives members the opportunity to see what the public have said. And all those comments are included within the appendices. And then it presents the options to Cabinet on whatever members want to do. The 3 areas that were suggested were to extend the charges all year round on the esplanades at Sandown, Shanklin, Ventnor and Cowes, to implement new charges along the stretch from Cowes, well, from Gurnard really, right the way along to Egypt's Point, and obviously that will be in place all year in the same way that they're in place all year on the other esplanades. And lastly, it was suggested to, and this was something that came out of the Wight neon green car parking exercise to put charges in place at the Park and Ride in Somerton, where it's currently free. However, we just get an awful lot of people parking in there that work on the industrial estate rather than people that are trying to park and ride. So they were the 3 suggestions. I would urge you all to obtain a copy of the report now it's been published, and we can certainly send this out as part of this agenda, and it is on corporate scrutiny next week. We had around about 464 objections to all of those 3 separate issues, which is quite similar to what you would normally get with any changes to parking charges or new charges in new areas. But I think the interesting point to note that actually, of those 400 odd, 449 of them were just about the Gurnard and Cowes introduction of charges. Sean, I don't know whether you want to add at all to that in terms of me giving an overview, or we just want to go to questions. You're on mute, Sean.
Thanks, Alex, and good evening, Chair and rest of the No, I think that's a very good summary of what was undertaken. As Alex said, it's a statutory consultation process in terms of a parking places order. Notice has to be placed in the local press and on site at each of the locations, informing the public of what the intention is. Large percentage, over 95% of people made objections and comments to the Cowes to Gurnard proposal, with a very small number for extending charges all year round along the esplanades and at Somerton Park and Ride. I think that's a fair summary. I don't think there's anything else to add, and we'd welcome questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newton. Councillor Medland.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just another little comment, really. I'm wondering if the report includes considering sharing responsibility on this with our local councils. We have a local council for every square inch of the Isle of Wight. And I feel they should be given the option of giving the Isle of Wight Council the amount of money it receives now from revenue from car parks to be able to have local management, so they can bring in local solutions. Because when you are at a local level, you often realise that bit of parking could be done in such a way as to, say, encourage retail, other kinds of businesses, tourism. It could be more flexibly managed. It could be with, obviously, it would have to include all the Isle of Wight vouchers and this sort of thing. But I feel that this ought to be increasingly looked at. In Freshwater, we're particularly arguing we would like to take over the 3 public car parks so that we can run them in our own way, manage them in a different way. They're sort of more reflective of the local needs. Is that something that you've thought about adding it or considering in this report?
Not as part of this report, but certainly as part of, I think, the report that's next on the agenda in terms of the parking strategy and the delivery report, because it was one of the discussions that came out of the stakeholder consultation with town and parish councils, is whether the Isle of Wight Council wants to consider decentralisation of its parking operations or not. Because it's one of those things you don't particularly want to do on a piecemeal basis. You want to do on a more strategic level, really. And as members will know, the only place that currently happens is in Ventnor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Minister. Councillor Jones-Evans, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Sean and Alex. I was just wondering, given the amount of objections to the Gurnard Cowes proposal, what is the recommendation from officers going to be?
The recommendation is officers put those charges in place.
Sorry, Mr. Mick, can you just repeat, because you froze there for a second? Yeah.
Yes, of course. The recommendation is to put the charges in place. But it's about having consistency of charging across the island.
Yeah, okay.
You don't hear me.
No, you probably have a problem with your bandwidth. I'm not sure if Mr. Newton could come in.
Yeah, absolutely. As Alex was trying to say, the recommendation is to approve all three elements of the parking order. And in relation to the stretch between Egypt Esplanade and Gurnard, it introduces a element of consistency between charging on all esplanades on the island, and that's one of the themes that came back very clearly from the consultation on the parking delivery plan, which is the next item on the agenda, in that we should have a consistent approach, but also balanced with a recognition of there may on occasions be reasons for regional differences across the island, but the starting point is a consistent approach, and this would provide that in terms of esplanades.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Are there any more questions on that particular parking places order? If not, can we, I know we've touched on, can we go on to the local strategy and delivery plan?
If you can hear me,
Yes.
I'm quite happy to pick up on that. It may be quite a straightforward and easy item. This was originally, and the reason it was put on the agenda today was because it was thought that this was going to be going to Cabinet on the 14th of January. That's now been postponed to the February Cabinet. I think I'm right in saying, though, that you haven't had a copy of the paper. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Right. Well, I think it's a 130-page document, at which the cabinet paper has yet to be published. So I would suggest, unless I mean, I can give a very brief overview of what the paper is, but I think to be fair to you all as councillors, you need to be given a chance to read this paper first. And it was hoped that it would be supplied with the documents. But in essence, what the paper is, and Sean may want to provide some context to this as well. You'll remember that we had a parking strategy that was agreed by Cabinet, was written by Wight Young Green, that was a paper that took, I think it was a strategy from 2021 to 26, and within that strategy, there was a suggestion that a park and delivery plan, if in essence an action plan, would be created from that, and that's what this piece of work is, and it's a very sizable document, and I think it needs to be read in its entirety. I'm sure we can provide at a later date, when the people have had a chance to read it, more of an executive summary to it, but we have got a little bit more time to do that. But in essence, what it does is the strategy made some primary recommendations on what aspect we needed to deliver. And this is setting some of those out. Some of them we've already achieved. So there was a huge aspiration, I think, from members to deal with the resident parking strategy, which you'll all remember. We've put all that together and we've worked that one through. So there are some boxes that have already been ticked, but there are some outstanding issues. Sean, have I covered that as you would expect? I mean,
the only thing I would add to it is it's a very comprehensive report, as you've said. It's over 130 pages. It's nearly 400 with all the various appendices and research and consultation which has been undertaken. It looks at balancing the demand for the need in parking, estimated growth in car ownership, with the need to regenerate, in particular, the high streets and the retail sector, which is particularly key post-COVID, or during and post-COVID. It looks at various scenarios for modelling charges going forwards and what that would mean in terms of income or loss of income if we were to implement certain schemes for limited free parking, either in certain towns or in certain time bands. It also looks at, as was mentioned earlier in committee, it looks at the need for electronic vehicle charging points, given the growth of that alternative technology and the demise of the petrol and diesel engine. And it looks at the council's parking stock and utilisation of the current council car parks, and recommends in places rationalisation of the parking stock where demand doesn't necessarily mean we need the number of car parks we've got, or indeed in the locations we have. And as we referred to in the previous item, the study into developing the park and ride at Somerton looked at the addition of a second storey to increase capacity. We undertook quite a lot of research in terms of how that facility was being used, and it was quite apparent that over 50% of people using that park and ride facility were using it for, in effect, free all-day parking, and the benefit of park and ride into Cowes and into Newport wasn't being realised. So that's where the charge for Somerton Park and Ride came around from. But it's a very detailed report. It's very comprehensive. The reason it was deferred is we presented it to the Parking Project Board, and we referred back to the initial project outcomes and objectives, and we wanted a little bit more detail in areas, and we also wanted a detailed action plan, which is now contained within the plan. So we've got some performance indicators and a degree of measurement in terms of actually achieving the delivery plan, which was something which was missing from the previous strategy. So it provides an update on what the work we completed in the previous strategy, which was 2016 to 2021, and gives us a framework going forward for how we can develop parking on the island and take that forward.
That's very good. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Jones-Evans would like to come in with a question.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. It's been a major frustration for me that I've not been able to see the draft strategy that from Wight Young Green, I believe came out end of October time. You know, I remember being in a meeting and as Councillor Hastings waving it in front of me, a virtual meeting, I hasten to add. But it's very frustrating that we haven't been able to see any of this this data. You know, many of us sat in front of our computers this evening. You know, took part in the consultation. So we all, what we're looking for. I know you talk about the consistency, but it was these local strategies. It was the differentiation with our areas and how that was going to be addressed, which is really, really important for members of this council, all members of the council, not just the cabinet. Now, I know the leader always likes to give me a lesson in how the administration works, but you know, I'm a member. I represent Newport Central. I represent 3,000 people, and I want to be able to have information. Now, it's a massive report, as you're saying, but there should be a portal where members can access and read it and understand it for ourselves. And that's a major frustration that I have no idea what contains in this report at all. And you know, there's not even a link. There's no, you know, we discussed it this evening, but I haven't got papers because I didn't get my papers at all. But there's a link to nothing on my online, so I literally have no idea what it contains. And there's opportunities, you see, we're missing because the Newport and Carrasbrook Community Council, we're next Monday we're going to be talking about our budget. We're all pretty much done on our budget work now. As Councillor Medland said, you know, there's local councils that want to get involved, you know, if we're able to, but we don't know what the recommendations are from Wight Young Green. No idea. So there's going to be an opportunity completely missed for a whole year because we won't be able to put anything to our budget. We won't be able to help at all. With this, with any aspirations or projects that might come out of this, then delay is quite costly. It's not another year gone. So I was just trying to vent my frustration because without information, how can we ask pertinent questions? We can't scrutinise anything, can we?
That's fine. You raise a very good point. So I'll give the opportunity for either Mr. Newton or for Mr. Minns to come back in on that if we can.
Well, I can start off that conversation. I mean, this is a report that's going to cabinet. It'll be published shortly. There is no reason why you couldn't see the parking delivery plan as it is now. So I would suggest that it's on the agenda at corporate scrutiny next week. My feeling is that paper should have been included as part of the agenda today. We can circulate that to you as a matter of course.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Minns. I'm on corporate scrutiny, so when I get my papers, no doubt there'll be a section. The paper will be in there, I'm guessing.
Okay, that's great. That's accepted. It's very easy for me to say, as I will do, thank you, but obviously there's an enormous amount of work that's gone into that and continues to go into that. So. I must echo the comments from Councillor Jones-Evans. We we need to see these reports without a doubt, so we can make an informed decision. So, okay, if there are no more questions on that particular item, I believe you're up for item 9 as well.
Yeah, we are.
Just quick, Chair, quickly, can I just say, so corporate scrutiny, the details I don't think they're even up actually, of the gender items yet. I can't see it. So unless it's on a different link. But yeah, there's one more question I have to ask. How many changes have been made to the paper, that the draft document, to the document that the Cabinet's going to get next week?
I can't answer that one.
Okay.
I think, if I may, Chair, it was more about providing additional information and an executive summary and a clear set of options and decisions for members to consider. There aren't, the recommendation is to adopt the delivery plan as drafted now, but there are a range of options and potential decisions for members to make. It isn't a case of adopting it and actually you've agreed to a certain policy. It's a framework and an action plan for going forwards. So it's more about including that range of options and making it explicitly clear what we can do going forward and what the options are in making those decisions.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm, Councillor Jones Evans, the agenda items went to all of the corporate scrutiny members 2 days ago.
The papers aren't up there though. The links to the papers aren't up there, Chair. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. So we've got a couple of there are a couple of links to papers, but there's a lot that are just in grey, not in blue. So
thank you. Duly noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we're no more questions, so we will move on to item 9, which is the beach management strategy. We can.
Okay. I think that's.
You want to open that one up then, Alex? Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've produced the beach management framework, which is attached as a paper to this document. And when I say we, I'd like to the 2 people that did the majority of work on that are Sean, who's on this call, and Trish Stillman. And that's been reflected earlier. There's an awful lot of work that's been put into that, as you can see. It is subject of a cabinet paper on the 14th and is on corporate scrutiny as well next week. Just to give people a bit of background on this, this came out as a result of an audit that we had done on water safety, and the audit team recommended that we had a beach management framework and an action plan that alluded from that. So the officers have been putting that together for the period 21 to 26, and obviously you have that paper as a background paper. What that framework seeks to do is to provide a list of all of the beach management activities that we currently have, and recommends some of the actions that we wanted to do to take it forward. And obviously the recommendation from Cabinet is that Cabinet approves the framework and allows us to deliver the action plan. In essence, that's what this is trying to do. It is quite extensive because there's an awful lot of work that goes on behind the scenes on beach management. Some of those aspects of that and some of the action plans start to reflect the fact that we need to do some auditing work and some benchmarking work around things like beach safety equipment and marker buoys, and benchmarking with other people, because it's very important that we've had a beach management service for years and it's changed no end. We had a whole team of people delivering it. We had a beach manager, we had lifeguards, we had a whole range of different things that we no longer provide. So it's important that we take stock of what we're providing and look at what others are doing and seeing if we're providing the right level of support in those areas. I would imagine, Sean, did you want to add to that again, and then we can take some questions?
No, you're absolutely right, Alex. In terms of the origin of this document, it did come out of the water safety audit. It was a medium risk in terms of the audit, in terms of use of council resources. The provision of water safety equipment primarily, so life belts, emergency telephones, had grown up piecemeal over the years. And what officers weren't able to say was provide an assurance that we had the right equipment in the right places. We couldn't say if we had too much or not enough, or it needed to be reallocated. So we were asked to produce a framework so we can actually demonstrate that and make best use of resources. And the action plan at the back is probably the thing to focus on at this moment in time. The report sets out the context of what we've got and why we've got it, but the action plan sets out how we'll go forward and ensure we do have the right level of equipment to ensure safety of life, but also ensure we don't overburden the council with equipment which isn't required.
And just for Chris's benefit, it does actually specify a person by each of the actions, from Chris's earlier comment.
I know that Councillor Quirk wants to come in, but I just have one question and one observation on, and I've read the framework from start to finish. So when you compare section 3 of the framework and section section 3 to section 6. Now, so we're saying that the council currently owns or leases, manages 35 beaches, which is correct. And the beach management budget for 2020-21 is 110,000. But when we read section 6 on the subsection 6.1, we then contradict by saying the budget's available for beach management for 2021, and you've done a brief breakdown. But that actually equates to 119,306. So we've got a variance of £9,306. So I just wanted to flag that up. And I don't know if you wanted to pick that up now. I've just got an observation on the action plan itself.
I can pick up the point in terms of the budget. You're quite correct. Those figures are different. They've now been amended to reflect the figure in section 6, the 119,306.
That's great. And having read the sections, so it's around the inspection reporting by your environmental officers, sections 4.3.8 through to 4.313, which covers the defects reporting, and then sections 4.4, 4.2 through to 4.4, 4.13. Just reading that is quite exhausting as regards to what is required of your EOs. You've got various ways of reporting, whether that be by paper, by email, by photographic evidence, etc., etc. So you've identified that in section 9 on your action plan, which is really, really welcome. The one thing, and probably I know Chris may pick up on that, is section 9 action plan is you've put in absolutely everything that you need to do, but you haven't got a finished date on that particular item. So that was just an observation from my point of view.
Thank you for that. We do now have a target date for item number 6 on the action plan. It's April 2021. In fact, I discussed it with Mrs. Stillman this morning, and she's got a meeting early next week with a fellow officer whose section already undertakes electronic reporting for all activities, and we're looking to replicate that within the next few weeks.
That's great, and I think that probably answers Councillor Quirk's question. Is that correct, Chris? You need to unmute, Chris. You need to unmute, Councillor Quirk.
It wouldn't unmute.
Fine now.
In terms of beach cleaning, item 4.3.7, it's a statutory duty upon the council to comply with the Keep It Tidy Code of Practice for beach clean. That says that the beach has to be clean. I think it's from May till end of September, every day, at least once a day. Where we're doing things on amenity beaches like Shanklin, only daily in the summer holidays, that doesn't seem to quite match with the requirement of the statutory duty. Comment, please.
I don't think that's my understanding of the statutory duty, but we can certainly check that and discuss that with you afterwards, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My question also revolves around beach cleaning. Councillor Brading obviously wasn't able to come today, but he read the paper and he was concerned, and I'm sure Councillor Outlaw would agree, that Lake appeared to be getting a bit of a hard deal in terms of beach cleaning. Now, I fully understand that Lake Beach doesn't generate the amount of litter that Sandown and Shanklin does, but if we could look at that, you know, as we implement this these plans, if we could look at the frequency of Lake Beach, and he will be happy, I think.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I know Mr. Newton's been looking at it with Councillor Hastings and the maps of the beach cleaning, and we are considering that at the minute.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I've looked at the cost of increasing the frequency at Lake from weekly to weekly but daily in school holiday periods, and I'm going to send a briefing note to Councillor Brading tomorrow, which sets out the additional costs and bluntly says that the authority hasn't got the funding to cover that, and if the parish council would like to call off additional services through the framework contract, what that cost would be to the parish council.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Jones Evans, please, and then Councillor Outlaw.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a brief comment again about funding. There's a hell of a lot to do in this report, and you know, beaches are one of our major assets, not only for our residents but for our tourists. So you know, it does beg the question: are we funding this to maximise not only our statutory duty but to really make the most of this fantastic asset? And that, you know, if you sweat your assets, you actually can earn more money. But anyway, that wasn't my main question. My main question is how clever someone's found some beaches that we didn't know we had. I was looking at page 17 of the action plan, and it says we're going to apply for registry of various beaches. Oh, that's brilliant news. So we've got some more land. So I just wonder if you can give us a bit more details, Alex, about that, and what potential development we could be looking at. Are we looking at beach concessions? Are we looking at beach huts? Presumably you're looking at getting some income from these brand new beaches we've found.
I think that's, and Sean can tell me if I'm wrong, I think that actually refers to some of the beaches that have been offered to us by people like the National Trust, etc.
It says a number of beaches that are owned by the Isle of Wight Council and have not yet land title.
In terms of those beaches, yes, we do own them, but the title isn't necessarily either registered or registered correctly. So it's more an administration process. We're already managing those beaches and incurring the costs in terms of management. Unfortunately, it's not a new beach. It's something we're already doing. It's more a case of tidying up the paperwork which sits behind that.
But it says that we can formalise the ownership, which would allow possible future development. So what does that mean then in that context?
Well, given that we haven't got the current title, we can't actually do anything with the land because we can't grant development, even though we own it. Once we own it, we could then look at opportunities. So there may well be opportunities arising from that.
Can you give us some example, please, Sean?
It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do it, I don't think, Julie. It means we've got the opportunity to do it if we so wish. But you are right.
I think, as you've said, Julie, there could be a beach concession so we could lease an area foreshore to a concessionaire and we could derive an income from it. But until we have a title for those pieces of land, we can't.
Yeah, well, that's good news. I mean, also that means then we can generate some income and then put more back into the beaches, which was my first point. So good news, and hope you've got enough resource to get that done.
This might be worth saying, Julia, quite an important point. It is very unusual for councils to own their own beaches. Isle of Wight is quite unique in that. I think that it was done a number of years ago. I'm not sure why, but it is quite unique.
So unique, good or unique bad?
I've never been too sure, really.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
More hot summers, that's what we need, and then there'll be fantastic assets, I'm sure.
Thank you. Councillor Outlaw, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very quick request for you, Sean. You mentioned that you were planning to send the costings for the beach cleaning for Lake Beach to Councillor Bradin as a fellow Lake councillor, but also as a Lake Parish councillor. I'd be most grateful if you could send it to me as well. We have a Lake Parish Council meeting next week, and we'll soon be setting the budget for the year. So having those figures would be really useful for me.
Absolutely, no problem at all. We'll have that by the end of tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, if we have any more questions, Mr. Nims or Mr. Newton, looks like so. I thank you both very much. It's been very informative, and it's been noted. And what I'd like to do is to include a 12-month update to go on to our work plan, if we possibly could. I mean, I know that sounds a long way off, but it's probably not. So I have a request for a 2-minute recess. Are we okay with that? Yeah. If all members are in agreement, if we just take a 2-minute comfort break, that would be ideal. Thank you very much. 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mike.
No problem at all.
It's very difficult to chair this sort of meeting when there's so many meaty topics to get your teeth into.
Yeah, I mean, we need to do it.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, it's frustrating. Sometimes we can't sort of delve a bit deeper, especially into the big reports. But anyway, at least they're going to go to cabinet and full council, the climate change one, so carbon emissions one. So that's good.
Just a reminder, we are still live, of course. Okay, all members, so we're going to resume our break now. And, okay, right, so agenda item 10, Regen strategy update from Mr. Chris Ashman, and an apology really. I think it was a victim of circumstance on our last committee meeting. We're right to go and move the car, so I do apologise, Chris, for that. So away you go.
Thank you, Chair. Can I know Councillor Whittle is with us on the call, possibly, and may, or you may have had another appointment to go to, unfortunately.
Can't see. Yeah, well, it looks like, yeah, Councillor Whittle is still there, yeah. Did you want to kick off, Chris, and perhaps give
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, obviously, we committed to provide the Policy Scrutiny Committee with regular updates on the regeneration programme, and I don't want to repeat any of the previous conversation we had around the COVID impact agenda, but obviously it has had and will continue to have an impact on our regeneration planning and delivery. But that being said, we have been able to move projects forward, and the paper really that we've prepared to the committee is if you like an annual update on key projects and activities, and hopefully it speaks for itself in terms of progress around each of the key themes of the regeneration strategy, which obviously members may recall include placemaking, housing, infrastructure, culture and environment, and area-based regeneration. So progress will be made on each of those, and we've given the highlights really in that summary report, and we continue to obviously seek to update the committee as we move forward with our regeneration agenda. And obviously it's worth restating that given the experience we've all been through in the last 10 months, if we didn't have a regeneration programme previously, we certainly would want one now, based upon the impacts that the pandemic has had and will continue to have on our economic and community recovery. So I think the administration made a good call really in putting in place the foundations for a progressive and comprehensive regeneration programme, and the island will, as a result, reap the rewards of that as we move forward into recovery from the pandemic.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Jones-Evans, and I'm not sure if Councillor Whittle would want to come in, but Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Chris, for the briefing. It's nice to have some pictures to go with all the words as well, puts into context. A couple of questions. Can you confirm has a sort of work started at Branson? Obviously, we've had the two planning permissions that have all gone through recently, and it says here starting on site January, February. So hopefully that is affected by the current lockdown. That's one question.
Yep, sure. Demolition starts on site. I think it's either next week or the week after.
Fantastic. That's really great news. Brilliant. The second thing is obviously, I'm very interested in Newport, and we've got some great achievements so far, especially with the HAS, the High Street Heritage Action Zone, which is moving apace, and as I reported yesterday at Newport Business Association, the tender for the design code has just gone out, so we're moving ahead with that, which is a critical piece of work, especially that will form a special planning document with the emerging island plan. So that's an excellent piece of work. I'm just looking at the harbour though. I was just wondering, obviously we still don't have the revision order. Are there any other risks to that programme, Mr. Ash? I know it's a very ambitious programme, but Cabinet have approved the master plan now. So what would your sort of, apart from not having the harbour revision order in place, what would you say are some risks going forward to delivering this very needed but rightly ambitious plan?
Sure. The main risks with the harbour master plan are similar to other challenges on sites on the island, which is viability. So the same challenges we face around the cost of construction on the site, the provision of a suitable infrastructure to enable development within the project, and I think that's why the master plan has been wisely constructed on a phased basis. With quite a pragmatic but yet ambitious set of project portfolio and development opportunities, so we can mix and match as and when the market response moves forward. You're right to obviously highlight the revision order, which will give the flexibility on disposal and lease arrangements regarding the different elements of the phased master plan for the harbour, and we're hopeful that we'll have some positive news on the granting of the revision order in a few weeks' time, which will obviously give it a major impetus. We do have some further work which we're doing on the flood forecasting work for the harbour master plan. It was recommended by the Environment Agency as part of our statutory consultations on the plan, and clearly climate change will be a significant risk for us, because the master plan has a 15-year time frame, and clearly the flood projection issues will be a major factor for us to consider in factoring in the implementation of that plan over that period. That being said, the support for infrastructure is going to be important to us. And I think the harbour infrastructure in particular, in terms of its current condition and also putting in place the new infrastructure the master plan proposes, will require third party and government support to make the development sites attractive for the private sector. So we obviously continue to lobby government for that support, and will continue to do so with any new funding opportunities that the government offers as part of COVID recovery and their stated aim for levelling up economic performance in different parts of the UK. I've forgotten what your other question was now, Councillor, but I'll attempt to answer it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It was just, I guess, it's looking for these opportunities and offering, almost shovel-ready proposals. And I guess you say where you've chunked it up into individual delivery plans. Hopefully the SOLEP in particular will look very kindly on us, and all the extra the infrastructure that gets put in is obviously going to be able to lever in other businesses, and also connectivity for that whole Medina Valley. So it's not just about the harbour itself, is it? It's about the other additionality, and even, you know, talking about the new garden village up at Camp Hill as well. So that's another big opportunity for us, where it's very important that we get the site ready. So that I see from your report that might need some extra investment for MOJ there. Sorry, I could go on a bit because it's quite exciting, isn't it, all of this? But thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Mr. Ashman. I'm not sure if, Wayne, if Councillor Whittle, are you able to join us? No. I know you're there. You're there in body. It's your microphone. Oh, okay. So, unfortunately, we can't hear you, Wayne, which is a great shame. So, no, okay. We'll have to, I think we'll have to abandon you for the moment. Right. Okay, members, so if there are no further questions on agenda item 10, which it seems they're not, no, okay. Again, Chris, Mr. Ashman, thank you very much. And I know you come right at the beginning and right at the end, so
we'll have to get better at planning that agenda, I think.
we do appreciate your intervention, so thank you very much. Okay, item 11, work plan, so it's pages 143 to 144. Not a great deal, members have got that, it's not a great deal to say on that. The date of our next plan meeting is the 8th of July. We are aware that, should I say, the election may or may not go ahead, or may not be deferred. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But whatever happens on that first meeting back of maybe a newly formed committee, we just have to wait and see. So we've got digital strategy, which is very welcome indeed, and especially after the conversations that we've had today around white fibre, etc. Regen strategy is always an important item, and we're going to bring heritage and museums on to that particular work plan as well. There'll probably be others, so I won't go on that. If there are any questions, then please fire away. If not, that links into item 12, which is members' question time. Are there any questions from members? No. Okay, look at that. 19, so I will adjourn the meeting at 19:28, and I thank you for your input, members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
All the best. Have a good new year.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye all.